Good evening. This is John Warren, publisher of the San Diego Voice and Viewpoint newspaper, coming to you with our program from the desk of the editor. We like to remind you that San Diego Voice and Viewpoint is the oldest African American publication of continuous service in San Diego County. We have had distribution in 89 zip codes, 17 cities, the unincorporated areas, retail outlets such as 7-Eleven. We give thousands of papers to churches every week and libraries. And this is all before we place the paper on the internet, which you can now get by going to sdvoice.info, and you can read it. Tomorrow's edition will be out first thing in the morning for this week. We've got endorsements in there. I'm going to talk about elections tonight, to give you a recap of what we did with our town hall meeting that was on the election process, because so many people are raising questions about who they should vote for and how. And we had a very successful meeting last week as we used a ballot example, and we went and had some discussion and tried to answer some questions. So if you have questions this evening, Dr. Thompson will tell you what to do in terms of getting those questions to us. And I'm trying to stay ballot focused. Usually I like to give a historical overview. I go back to post-slavery, Black members of the Senate and the Congress and from the South and all those kind of things. But I want to focus on this ballot that we're facing and give you some examples of some things that have happened. So I want to pause for a moment, let Dr. Thompson speak to you. Then I'll come back and jump right in with this. You might want to have pencil and pad for some of it. I'm doing it from memory, so I will try to be as accurate as I can.
Well, good evening, Dr. Warren. This is from the desk of the editor, and we're so happy that you are joining us in tonight. We are streaming on Facebook Live, on GOD Radio, on The Voice and Viewpoint, on Streaming on Demand. We're streaming on LinkedIn, YouTube, IG, as well as we're streaming on our website, as well as on our app. And we want to welcome everybody here tonight. It is going to be a jam-packed show. We're hoping that you take your pen and paper out, ask your questions, put your questions in the feed. So if you're on either YouTube or Facebook, you can type it in, and we will be able to answer your questions and see your questions right away. Dr. Warren.
I want to start off by discussing the voting, not only in California. I want to tell you what happened last night in Texas. In Texas last night, we had a tremendous upset. We lost one of the stalwart members of the Congressional Black Caucus, went down in defeat in terms of the primary, and that was Representative Al Green. He served in the Congress some 20 years. He was a lawyer and a judge before that, and a young Black man took over. And what happened in Texas, you remember that Trump gave the orders to redraw the districts there, and it put Black members of Congress at risk. Sheila Jackson Lee's seat got involved. Then Jasmine Crockett's seat was involved. And of course, Al Green's seat. Jasmine Crockett chose to run for the Senate against Tallarico, who beat her as a Democrat in the primary. And he is the one that the Republicans are going to have to run against. And so the primary that yesterday, what we had was a runoff election that was between Patton, who was a former attorney general in Texas, who had a track record of criminal allegations. There was an effort to impeach him, which failed. And then there's a divorce and adultery and all kinds of issues. But he was running against Cochran, who had been a Republican in the Senate for over 40 years in the state of Texas. And he fell out of grace with Trump. Trump endorsed Paxton, and Paxton got about 70%, 67% of the vote when there was nothing else left for him to get, when it was very clear that he was winning. And now the Republicans will have to spend a ton of money to try to beat Tallarico, who is the Democrat that's expected to be the first Democrat to hold a Senate seat in 40 years in Texas. So that's the Texas scenario. Alabama has its own set of problems because Once again, the gerrymandering Republican entity was trying to get a district approved that was detrimental to their lone black representative. It had been turned down before. After the Supreme Court decision of a couple of weeks ago, all of these states started rushing back into court, and they were violating, many of them, a thing called the Purcell rule, that where the Supreme Court had ruled historically in the past, some 20 years ago, that elections shouldn't be challenged or boundaries shouldn't be changed so close to actual elections. And so in Louisiana, they pushed the election back, and they're doing all kinds of stuff because the people are voting against the Republican approach to protecting Trump. And so Trump has become the issue. He's hurting those that are surrounding him. And let me just jump on into California. So we got all of this happening. We got Susan Collins running in Maine. She's been in for over 30 years, I think. This would be her sixth term if she could get reelected. And she's been a classic pork barrel experience. When they use the term pork barrel in Congress, that's a situation where a member brings resources to their district. And they usually made it sound like a barrel of pork because it was to be passed around. And so in Louisiana, one time we had a bridge built to nowhere just so some people could be employed. So she's running on now. She's going to be chair of Senate Appropriations, and she's going to be in a position. She's running against a veteran and a former veteran and an oyster farmer who, again, is not looking at yesterday, but looking at what can be happening for Maine going forward. And she's important because the Senate was always in a tie situation. Now we have a chance to break that Republican stronghold on the Senate. They failed in South Carolina to get a gerrymandered district passed, which would have eliminated James Clyburn, who is the one black congressman from South Carolina and the senior political influence. He's the man that endorsed Biden when nobody else would and turned the whole campaign around and made Biden president. And so he's going to still be okay. Republicans crossed the aisle and voted with Democrats on him. Now we come to California. In California, we had Proposition 50 passed last November. And what happened in Proposition 50 was the fact that California has 52 congressional seats. 12 of them are held by Republicans. All across the country, we rushed into holding early redistricting sessions like Prop 50 so that the Democrats would have a chance to increase the number of Democratic seats in the House going toward November, so that Trump's plan, which he counted on the court ruling in his favor, the Supreme Court, and it did in some of it, but a lot of these plans in the states that he went into are failing. The people are not choosing to make the adjustment that he wants to see made. And so here we are in California. Those of us here in San Diego County, we get affected, okay? Because in San Diego County, we have already 3 members of Congress. We have Juan Vargas, who's been there forever, and some of us really feel almost too long, but that's another topic for another time. We have Scott Peters, and Scott is done well, but I think he wants to become future mayor of San Diego. Sarah Jacobs, who took Susan Davis's place. But now the 48th district, which is East County, which is where Darrell Issa was for so long, the redrawing of our boundaries under Prop 50 created the opportunity for California to pick up 5 seats that were historically Republican, and the redrawing of the boundaries, which was called gerrymandering, made it possible for Democrats to run. And this was our effort to make sure that we sent as many Democrats to Congress as possible, because we need to get control of the House. Control of the House means Hakeem Jeffries goes from being minority leader to speaker. Mike Johnson is out. Committee assignments go back to Democrats, and we can get rid of all of these people who have done nothing but sit on their hands and rubber stamped everything Trump has done, which has been a violation. So we can get an impeachment, And we got people running for the Senate. If we get control of the Senate, then impeachment starts in the House, but the trial takes place in the Senate. And if we're able to do that, we are coming after people. When I say we, I mean those who believe in a democracy, our democratic principles. And so this is a very significant election that's coming up next week. In the East County District, which is the 48th Congressional District, here's where the people come from. 47% of that district is in North San Diego County, 44% of it is in Riverside, and 7% of the district is in Palm Springs. And so ISA controlled, after we went through this whole thing of making sure, trying to redistrict last time and gave East County to him, we have Marnie Von Wilpert, who is a member of the San Diego City Council, as a Democrat, is running for that seat. Campo Najjar, who ran for it, I don't know how many times so far. Then he moved down to Chula Vista to run, and he's all over the place. And he called himself, I guess he saw himself as the great Chaldean hope in terms of getting into office. But we need to make sure that Marnie Von Wilpert gets in, so that we are sending, as a result of Prop 50, we are sending members to Congress that are Democratic, which are going to flip those 5 or 6 seats that we had. And we already have the governor calling for a special election, I believe in August, to fill the seat of Sawell, who got caught up in the sex scandals, and he was running for governor, a lead contender. The scandals that he got caught up in made it necessary for him to resign. And so now we have a power shift. And now let me get to the ballot in terms of California. So in California, we have approximately 60 people running for governor. And I mean, you got everybody from the dog, the cat, and the big bow wow, all kinds of people, because our system allows folks to do that. And since our system allows people to run, once they qualified or they certified and met the requirements to get on the ballot, in your printout book, you saw all of these names. But here's what the deal comes down to. Under the California Primary Election Act, which was passed a few years ago, when November comes, the 2 people who got the highest percentage of votes will face off. And so one of the fears has been that with 2 Republicans running and this whole host of Democratic candidates, that the Democrats are going to split the vote, and that the conservative element who supports the Republicans, even though it's a minority, they're going to coalesce around these 2 people, and in giving their votes to them, the whole idea is both of them will reach that threshold that will make them the runoff contenders in November. And if that happens, then the state does no longer have a chance of having a Democratic governor. It would have a Republican governor. And so even though that was explained to these people that are running, they didn't care enough to make any adjustments. Lead contenders in this race at this point, Tom Steyer has spent about 150, now they say $195 million campaigning for this position. And he has quite a track record if people go beyond the money in terms of the things that he's done with his money in the past 40 years in terms of programs and people and jobs and the whole thing. And he's the first to tell you he knows that there is a racist structure here that has to be overcome, and that the powers that be obviously would not want him there, because unlike most people in office, he doesn't need their money. And you know, the one other state that has that kind of leadership is Illinois, because the governor of Illinois is a billionaire, but he's in touch with the people. And I remember during the Republican National Convention when people were talking about how much money Donald Trump had, he made the statement. He says, Donald Trump's no billionaire. He's a paper tiger. He says, I'm the real billionaire. But he's involved, and he has been documenting all the stuff that ICE has been doing in Chicago. His position is, when your term is up in office, we coming for you. We're going to prosecute you. We're not going to forget all the stuff that you've done. And people love him for that posture. So Steyer is running, And at the same time, we have Xavier Becerra running. And Becerra has a history because he's been former Attorney General, former Secretary of Health and Human Services beforehand under Obama, I believe it was. And he's been a member of Congress. And now he's running, and he's running from the standpoint of people have his name and name recognition. And so we have a Hilton running who's a Republican, and we got a couple of Republicans running. And you probably have a sample ballot. You can look at those people. You probably don't know who you're going to recommend. I've talked to people about it, and we've looked at it. We are putting our recommendations out. So we're supporting Steiger in the midst of all this madness, because we think that when you really get down to the track record and get beyond the sound bites on the money, that he's the best shot. I don't see Xavier in all of his efforts. His community leading seems to be almost totally Latino. He does not talk about interests of the rest of who we are and where we are. And even though he's come along at the last minute to do business with the black press, and as a disclaimer, us included, our votes are not for sale. And so we don't think that that's going to be a best choice. But in the end, the choice is yours, the voter. We're not telling you who to vote for. I'm mentioning this because people have, ever since our town hall meeting, keep asking me about individuals because they don't have the data, because many didn't have statements, and they want to be serious about the vote in terms of how important it is. So I've spent a lot of time looking at these people's background, their track records, who they are, who they say they are, what they don't do. And as a result of that, I'm making suggestions in terms of which way we're going. But, save the phone call if you want to call and complain that I made an endorsement. Yeah, I got a right to do so. And you don't have to pay attention to it. You got to vote. You can use it the way you want to. So, Dr. Thomas, let me take a breath here. I haven't even gotten to the governor is the first of 5 constitutional officers in the state of California. The second one is the lieutenant governor position. And then the third one is the treasurer. I'm sorry, the third one is the Secretary of State, the controller, the treasurer, and then the state controller. Those are the 5 constitutional officers. Dr. Shirley Weber is number 3 in leadership for the state, because the Secretary of State comes directly behind the vice after the lieutenant governor. And the lieutenant governor candidate is Mark is Fong. I don't have the ballot in front of me, but she's been the one that's done a great deal. And the former lieutenant governor, Ellen Kalinowski, is running for treasurer, and she has a track record of service, and so people are looking at her. The 2 black members on the 5 are Dr. Weber, Secretary of State, who, as far as there are no Democrats challenging her, you can always have a couple of Republican candidates, but she's been one of the leading Secretary of States in the nation, rising up against all of the stuff that Trump has done to usurp the power and independence of states as sovereign entities. Our controller, state controller, is Malia Cohen. She's African American. She has still a great opportunity to do much for the state and to do a great deal for us. I have been disappointed so far in terms of what she's done with unclaimed property, because historically in the past, unclaimed property, according to the state statute, public notice was placed in our newspapers throughout the state. And now what she's done is she's given a contract to advertisers who have now come back and try to ask for demographics, when under government code section 6001 through 8, public notice is required to be printed. And so I'm very disappointed that even after I spoke to her about this one time before, she pulled the contract back, and now she's let it again, and we're back to the same stuff. The reason this is so important is that at least 40 to 49% of this state still is not on the internet. And so what happens is when you put all of the stuff on the internet for unclaimed property, and there are business people out there who grab the list, grab the names, and then they get in touch with you and offer to help you get your money back for a percentage of what you had when you could have gone and got your money yourself if it had been presented in such a way that you could use it and made it available to you. And so I'm not happy with Malia, but I'm a vote for, because we can't take the chance of losing not one Democrat in this crazy period that we have. We can't lose. And so that is the reason. And I want you to be bigger than one issue. The people on the ballot are not going to give you everything you want, but you have to weigh the harm back and forth. One of the other key positions there that I did mention is the superintendent of public instruction. Now, that can be kind of tricky for you. There's a sister running for superintendent. Her last name is Long, Ayila or something, and I can't remember. You can see it on your ballot. But there's also Richard Barrera running, who is a former vice president of the San Diego Unified School Board.
And president.
And we have had a great deal of unhappiness with him in terms of things that could have been done, many of us think, to help the African-American community. And Dr. Thompson is also has worked with him in the past. I'm giving a vote to Richard for the simple reason that as superintendent of public instruction, it'll be the first time that we would have someone from San Diego and Sacramento in a position to influence what happens with education, not only for the state, but for our county as a part of the state. And that's an issue that's bigger than any past grievance we might have had with the individual. And I must also, as a disclaimer, that he did reach out to us and to our papers, I believe, in other areas of the state, because he understands from the years that we fought and struggled to get stuff done, how important we are for education. Many of you might not know this, but about 50 years ago, we had a man by the name of Wilson Riles, who was the first Black man to become superintendent of public instruction in California. And going back to those days before we got the lottery, it was the Black press that worked to get the lottery so that the money from the lottery, a percentage of it, would go to education in the state when people didn't want it. And we fought as papers very hard to get the lottery, to get the dollars that are now coming to school districts. And so it's kind of a full circle to have someone from here run to become the superintendent of public instruction. And I wanted to share that. We also have a Board of Equalization position on the ballot. And, you know, the Board of Equalization is not only responsible for weights and measures, but, you know, the sales tax that we pay. That's why when you see stores running 2 tapes every time they're making purchases, part of it is for their record, and the other part is a state record. And the state is very aggressive in terms of sales taxes being paid on time, big criminal issues if you don't do it. One of the nice young people running for that is Martin Arias, as for the 4th Board of Equalization, District 4, which we are in. And so this is an important position, and you wouldn't necessarily know that, but now you see it on the ballot. Another position I want to mention is the insurance commissioner. And the insurance commissioner is so critical when you look at what happened up in the LA area in terms of the fires and all that we went through, insurance companies trying to pull out of state, not wanting to renew people's policies. There's a man running by the name of Steve Bradford, and he's a former state senator. Most of us down here have never known or heard of Steve, but the past 2 or 3 years, I've worked very closely with Steve as he is supported our battle for public notice, so that we could have public notice. And now that he termed out of the Senate, he's running for insurance commissioner. Steve Bradford, I believe, deserves a vote, as opposed to you just closing your eyes and picking somebody that you don't know, when here's an opportunity to make a difference and let it be known in terms of what your vote is doing. So I've run down some positions here from so far. I've gone to governor, lieutenant governor, I've gone to secretary of state, I've gone to state treasurer, and I've gone to the state controller. I've gone to the superintendent of public instruction. Now, the superintendent of public, present superintendent, Tony Thurmond, is running for governor, but Tony doesn't have a chance in terms of this time around. The money that's being put in, and we're not even going to talk about that crazy sheriff that everybody's looking at, talking about how much he loved Trump and what he's going to do. All we do is stay away from the crazies and don't give them airtime, and we just move forward. And so I gave you about 6 positions that are crucial in terms of the state level. Now we're going to come on down to the rest of us. And I'm going to pause for a moment, Dr. Thompson, because I don't know if you have anything or comments or questions. And my mind is rolling on this, and I want to pause as it regroups.
Yes, Dr. Warren, one of the things is that it's very important that everybody realize that this is a very busy ballot, a very extensive ballot. So you have to take your time and literally go through it. There's a question that came about how about Measure A? A lot of people are interested in Measure A and which way to go because of the way it's written.
Well, Measure A is kind of is a tricky one because it's talking about making a tax on second homes that sit for a while, and people have mixed feelings about it because the second home is all really became an issue in other states like Detroit when Black people got into office and had more than one residence. I remember being in court one day in Detroit, and it was a Black woman there who was a supervisor, and someone had brought the charge that she didn't live in the district that she represented, and she had 2 homes. And the judge was leaning toward that. But the mayor of the city at the time was a very well-known, well-respected Black man, and he just came and sat in court. And the whole issue was, you got all these white people that have more than one home. You can have a second home, and if you decide that that second home is your domicile and that's the home that you vote from, then that's okay. But what they're trying to do now is say that if your house sits vacant for so long, then there's a tax, and the tax goes up. And part of the reason for that is that many homeowners are concerned about the people who are doing Airbnb, and they don't want unknown people coming in. My big concern initially when I thought about supporting it was that we got all of these condos and high-rise apartments sitting empty, and we have this big homelessness issue. And that if we were to do, as some places have done, pass a tax that says that if a property sits empty for so long and you got to pay a tax, that might be a motivating effort for some people to rent those properties out and to alleviate some of the pressure, since we cannot possibly build housing units to accommodate the need fast enough in terms of the economy that we're in. So my final vote on Measure A is to vote no on it, because there are too many other things that can happen with it, and we want to make sure that we don't do that. We don't need it necessarily right now, so we can skip our Measure A.
Well, Dr. Warren, that is a lot of people have asked that question, so I think that's very good. Another thing is that the support of people that we might not have seen be supportive of us, even like with Richard Barrera, I think that it would be good for us to have the representation from our home city and to have a voice up at the State Department. But my question is going to always come about is that after the election, will we be true to our word, or will we go back to our old practices of only taking care of those that look like us and that serve our purpose?
Well, one of the things that the beauty about the American democratic process is we do have a recall provision in the Constitution. And, it requires some work to get the number of signatures to move. There was an effort just a few years ago to recall Gavin Newsom, the governor, and it went to a vote, and it failed. It was defeated. And so the issue is we can't be afraid to put people in office that we know some things about when we got people waiting out there to get in those positions who either don't know we exist or could care less whether or not we exist. One of the guys running as a Republican against Dr. Weber was talking about how he wants voter ID and he supports ICE and all this kind of stuff. And yet in states like Arizona, you've had probably about 15 cases filed against ICE. And right here in California, Attorney General Bonta and the governor, they have filed so many cases against the Trump administration, against ICE, against putting the guards on the streets in LA when there was no need for it. And they are winning. States are winning these cases. And so the big complaint about California right now is that we are slow in the vote count, but we are slow in the vote count because we are one of the biggest 52 congressional districts. Outside of Texas and maybe New York, nobody else is that big. And so it takes time to be accurate with it. And you got to be concerned about your ballot, folks, because you got a drop box at all the libraries. Now, I know I'd be mentioning because Voice and Viewpoint was primarily given birth in 92113, 114, 115, those zip codes. But all of our libraries, Breckenridge, Skyline, Malcolm X, Oak Park, everywhere you turn, every library has got drop boxes throughout the county. And they pick the ballots up daily. If you go to the post office, you need to make sure if you want to mail it, that they put the cancellation stamp on it in front of you and you don't just drop it in the box because they're not going to be trying to help us with the count. And you can track your ballot based on the QR code that's on it. And so we don't have an excuse. If you're not sure, you can go into any voting place as of the 30th. You can go into any voting place and you can get a ballot and you can mark it. It'll be called provisional. Some states, they call it challenge. What they do is they let you vote, they seal it, they don't look at it. And then when they start counting on election day, let me tell you how this works on election day. I helped create the precincts in Washington, D.C. 50 years ago and ran the elections, helped run the elections when they were hand counting paper ballots. Okay. And it took us days of counting ballots and people watching to see how they were marked. You remember we had this issue called the hanging chads, where folks just marked and they wasn't sure which line they wanted the mark to go on. So we've gotten much better. This is a long ballot in California that we have, and there are two sides to the ballot. Okay. But what happens is on election day, the ballots that are going in now, they are being counted that morning while people are voting the first box, which is like opening at 7, and they vote that first batch. They cut that box off at 2:00 and turn it into the register of voters. And then the second box goes from 2 to 7. And so what happens is when the polls close at 7 or 8:00, whichever it is, the results that they release then are really from the ballots that were already put in early, because they have not necessarily counted all of the morning ballots, though they have started counting them. And then by the time they get to 8:00 when the polls close, that's when they're counting the rest. In some counties, they're able to be finished by 11. But we have a couple of million people that have already, millions have voted. But the numbers that have voted so far in the state are, last indication, it was less than 10%. And so we need people to really vote, folks, because we can stand around and talk about the Supreme Court decisions and what's being done. But if you're not voting, you're not participating. And the only weapon we have against what's taking place is our vote and our dollar. I keep telling you in my editorials, that's where the power is. You stop spending with these companies, you see if they don't decide we better do something to get this dollar back. You running into Jack in the Box and Popeyes and Burger King and McDonald's and Target and all these places, and you're just spending because this is what I want. And I keep telling you, it's not a question of what you want, it's a question of what you need. And if you got to go in to buy what you need, then postpone what you want until the time that you'll want has become important enough. There are 3 things I keep telling you that corporate America understands. They understand lost profits, bad publicity, and votes cast against their interests. And you are in control of the last 2, bad publicity and votes against their interests. They might have enough money that they don't care about the few little dollars that they think you spend. But guess what? Black people in America spend over $3 trillion a year. And we're spending millions in San Diego County while people decide whether or not they want to acknowledge us or deal with us. And any candidate that really has not talked to you doesn't necessarily deserve your vote. And that's why I'm spending the time pointing out the ones that are so critical that we can't afford not to vote in spite of it because the numbers are there. Let me tell you, the people are going to look at what happened in next Tuesday in the primary, and they're going to make decisions on which ethnic groups of people are important going toward November. And when they look at our votes, and they can track your votes, folks, don't think they can't, that you can hide and be anonymous. They can track your votes, your ethnicity, what you're doing with your votes, and the whole piece. And they will make decisions based on how they spend their money and who they try to go for to get elected after that's done. So this is critical.
Well, Dr. Warren, one of the questions that is coming up is, what is the power of the endorsement when you're endorsed by big people? But Sarah just received a couple of big endorsements today. What is the power of endorsements, and how does it impact elections?
Well, the endorsement is an oxymoron, because people who don't have them will say it don't count. People who do have them will say it does count. A case in point, we get down to the city of San Diego. We got 2, 4, 6, and 8 in terms of elections. We got Henry Foster, assuming that he's got it made because he is tied into Monica. He's tied into Shirley Weber. He's tied into the state senator. He's tied into Lachey. And it's not that they've made any agreements with him, but it's just that he knows that when people start voting these familiar names, then his name is with them, that his chances of being elected will be considered greater than Martha Abraham. The good news for Martha Abraham is that she's got 2 names that everybody who's ever been in church know, okay? And the names are important because Martha is her first name. Abraham, from her culture, is the result of the girls taking the father's name as their last name. And so that's going to make a little difference. When we go to East County, we got a situation where Joel Anderson has termed out. And so we got Republicans that people are going to support him because East County, rural, conservative, he's a Republican. They're going to want to go for him. Larry Cohen, on the other hand, who just came from working for Vargas and got appointed, the 2 of them might be the 2 highest vote getters so that they have to face off in November. But unless Cohen does something really significant, he's not going to beat Joel Anderson because it's not about how much money. So the endorsements has to go to who the person is as a candidate, who the people are making endorsements. Right now, this governor's race has come down to dollars and cents. Because Steyer has money and others don't have as much, they're trying to play the thing that he's trying to buy it. Well, he's not the first billionaire to run for office and not win if he doesn't, because he had money, because California has already established that they can't be bought. Okay. But there are other things. I mean, because you got a couple of actors that have been governor. Okay. Schwarzenegger, he's still speaking with an accent. Ronald Reagan still making westerns and movies and stuff, and you put those people in. Earl Warren came from California, and he became went in there conservative, and he became the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court that brought us Brown versus Board of Education when Vinson died in 1953, who was Chief Justice at the time. And so let's not let your vote depend on the endorsement. That's why I'm spending this time trying to give you some idea about who people are. And you need to take time with this ballot. Don't try to do it all at once. If you get tired, stop and get a cup of coffee or whatever you're drinking and take a break and come back and look at it. Don't be swayed by all the pretty stuff you get in the mail. It's easy for people to do mailers to you. Okay. But what are your interests and your needs? Mm-hmm. And that's the question. And how can your needs be addressed? And how much do people in other areas have to work with the person that you want to vote for to get your needs addressed? You see, That's what Prop 50 was about. We're trying to send 5 more Democrats to Congress to help the needs of all of us. As Spock says in Star Trek, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. And that's what we're after. I'm sorry, Dr.
So,
Thompson, go
Dr.
right
Warren,
ahead.
one of the things, is it too late at this point to get involved? If you still want to make an impact, how can you get involved and how can you make a difference at this late date?
Well, there are a couple of things you can do, and we offer this every year and it never happens. There are people who need a ride to the polls, and you can give them a ride, volunteer your services, okay? You can ask your church to make it a point of set aside a time on election day that people who need a ride can come to church and members can volunteer to take them to the polls. We can discuss with them the positions and the people that are running for office, and so that you vote for those, and those that you don't know, you don't have to vote for. The important thing is that you vote. For instance, we got judicial positions on the ballot, and in some cases, you got one judge's name for a department. Well, that person is going to automatically go into office because they're not being challenged. But one of the judges that I'm supporting, one of the candidates for judge is Tia Ramirez, okay, because she comes with a strong track record. One of the people that I don't want to see as a judge is Myra Elliott, who was our former city attorney. And we tried hard to work with that woman. And as far as I'm concerned, it's a mistake to reward her with a position on the bench. And all you have to do is think back that you have a pleasant experience with the city while she was city attorney. If you did, don't vote for her. Don't vote for her just because you see her name. Well, she smiled and she spoke to me. And so, yes, she doesn't care about you one way or the other. Okay. So let's be for real. You're in the driver's seat when you pick up that pen. So you just out of jail and you got a prison record. Well, guess what? Based on what Dr. Weber did when she was an assemblywoman, you can now vote. So you're homeless and you don't have an address. Guess what? Homeless people can still vote. And so it's not much that you can do. Now, you got the other side of people saying, well, we got undocumented people voting. It hasn't been proven. So let's not get caught up in all of that.
So, Dr. Warren, one of the questions is, what is the impact of not voting?
The impact of not voting is you get exactly whatever you deserve. Whatever it is, if it's bad, you deserve it. If they kick your butt, if they kick you out, if they raise your rent, if you lose your job, whatever happens to you and people who made decisions you didn't vote for them, you deserve to have it happen because you sat on your hands and you bought the old myth that, well, my vote don't count anyhow. Hey, guess what? That's not true. Because in 1964, there was a case in the Supreme Court called Reynolds v. Sims, based on the 14th Amendment due process. And it said that every vote count. One man, one vote. If you don't believe it, take a lottery ticket and come up short on one number and see if you win. Okay? So don't be fooled by this. Get involved. Make a commitment beyond your own interests, because most of us have been so anesthetized in California and San Diego that we don't want to do anything unless we see how we benefit. And we got to go back to the old ways of the collective. Yes.
So, Dr. Warren, I was laughing. I said, center yourself back into the screen. You was start leaning over to the side. It started getting good to you. One of the things that's so important in this time in the season is for us to get an understanding. And how we get an understanding is to have true dialogue. So we want to make sure that people are still putting their questions in the feed so that you're able to answer it. And, as we have the props that are coming down, we have the local, we have the state, and we have the national election. A lot of things are happening nationwide. Does it look like, in your opinion, we're going to be able to keep the House?
Oh, I believe we are going to win the House. And every election just about that Trump has gone after someone, those people have been defeated. And that's why he's trying to get the names of the precinct, the voting, the workers, which he has no grounds to get. And he's looking for that. That's why he's going to send ICE agents out to the voting sites with guns and uniforms to intimidate people when they vote. He's going to try every trick in the book. But I'm encouraged when I look at the long lines that people are standing in. And what we're trying to do is say, if you vote now, you don't have to be in a long line, because one of the things that happened, first of all, according to what Dr. Weber did, every person in California that was eligible to vote got a ballot mailed home to them. That's almost unprecedented. Everyone got a ballot mail. You don't have to go and sign your name and then get a ballot. You got your ballot. You can turn it in on election day if you want to. Go to your poll and turn it in, put it in the box and put it in the mail, track it, everybody. And you got to understand that you are important to what's happening. You are so important. You know, we got friends that live all over San Diego County. All right. So we have District 3, which is North County, is up on the ballot. And you could say, well, I don't know anybody in North County. And so, but you know, I don't know the people on the ballot. But when I check North County, I see that there's a guy named Musgrave or something running, who has a tremendous track record of being about helping people, even though some of the other candidates, like a mayor of one of the cities, has a lot of support. Well, those who are in office are always going to have the support of people that are afraid of losing their gravy connection or their gravy ticket. So that's why you have to balance it. Is the key is the people that you support that are not in office. You know, it didn't take me long to decide that I was going to support Martha Abrams for this district seat. And I'm not even in the 4th district. I live in District 9. But I, through this paper, encourage people to vote for a young, energetic Black woman who was a major player in Footnote 7, who's fought all of the encroachment on Encanto, but who is a healthcare provider, is still concerned overall for people and how they're doing.
So again, it's not always that you live in the district that you're supporting in, because all the districts ultimately have to work together. I believe in the city council, you need to count to 5 votes to actually get anything moved forward. So how are we strategizing? If you live in District 4, whatever district you're in, how are we strategizing to get our votes spread out enough to make the impact?
And most of us are not doing it, Dr. Thompson, and that's very important, because the closest thing to District 4 is District 8 going south, and then District 9 going north, okay? And so we not only vote in 4, but we should be looking at our friends and relatives and neighbors that either live or work in 9 or 8 and talk to them about the situation in terms of what our needs are and who they're going to vote for. Because if we find out what their needs are and we tell them what our needs are and the things match, then we can put our heads together in terms of voting. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time left to do that. And that's how pressure groups and interest groups are created. And in the months coming ahead between now and November, I'm going to be doing a series of podcasts about the elections, the election process, the politics of pressure groups, interest groups, lobbyists, and little people becoming big people. You know that song, little becomes much when you give it the master's touch. And we got that touch in terms of what we can do with that ballot that can turn things around. Winston Churchill once said that democracy is a poor form of government, but all the others are so much worse. I don't want us to be distracted with the hate crimes. I don't want us to be distracted with the war, with the Strait of Hormuz. Yeah, all that's going to be there after next Tuesday. What we need to focus on right now is getting these votes in the ballot box and making sure that the people we support are going to be the winners that are going to bring it. I'm not mad with Steiger that he made billions, okay? But I'm also happy that he's got a track record of giving money back and helping us in many fronts.
So let me ask you a question. I believe that after all the elections are over, we all have to come back together and work together. How can we make an impact? Because I believe that this election and the climate of our nation and of these elections have become very divisive, very separatist, in the sense that people are going for the jugular like there's no tomorrow, that we don't have to all live together again after it's all over. How do we change the energy of elections and of our society right now?
Well, one of the things we don't do, Dr. Thompson, is cave in and get weak in front of the people who we think are in positions to have influence, okay? We don't do that. We stand our grounds. And one of the things I like people to know is that, I was an elected official at one point in my life, and I learned something very significant. There's a tendency when there were people that didn't support you that you want to ostracize them and blacklist them and do all of that. You can't do that because there is a provision in the state statute that calls that malfeasance in office. And if a person, like all the stuff that Trump's doing, oh, he should have been in jail, separate from the 31 counts, just the whole idea of using a position in a punitive fashion. So you hold them accountable, even if you didn't vote for them, because the position is bigger than the personality of the person. And I'm going to help people learn how to hold them accountable.
Well, Dr. Warren, another question is there anyone in the pipeline we should be looking for future leadership positions?
You know what? The leadership positions are the result of people who have done the work. I hate for people to come to me, as a person did recently, and say, well, my cousin wants to run for Congress and they asked me to talk to you. I said, you can tell your cousin to just go home and do something else. It's too late to come asking, we want to have an editorial meeting with you because we want to run. What the hell did you do before you decided you were going to run? When were you out there in the vineyards working, unknown, doing stuff because it needed to be done, helping people because they need it? That's where leadership is born out of commitment. People who want to serve rather than being served. And when I see people who want to serve but have not, who want to be served but have not served, then I have a problem with that. And so, yeah, you tell them now. And part of the problem is our schools do not teach people government. It teaches a watered down version of civics that leaves us out of the picture in terms of how we go about making change. And that's why I'm so big on public policy and advocacy.
Okay, so Dr. Warren, in our last 4 to 5 minutes, what is your message to the state, the nation, where overseas? Everybody's tuned in. And as you know, we are getting massive reviews even after we go offline. What is the message moving forth? Election day is next Tuesday. Do we see a literal change in the atmosphere, the climate, or are we going to get more of the same?
Well, the change is already occurring. We're in primary season now, and primaries are being held in different states. I would suggest if you follow like MS Now on television or CNN, you will see each day those primaries and the results and the composition, and you can see what is happening. So you need to pay attention on a national scale. I believe, and I'm in touch with my papers in all 50 states, wherever we have newspapers, black papers, and we have publishers. As their chairman, I'm in touch with them. They're running my editorials. They're running my news clips on the election process. And that's what we need to do. We need to be actively committed to this. Georgia is a perfect example of people who have come together and decided that you can try to cut out Sunday voting. You can try to cut whatever you want to. Keisha Boggs there, who was mayor of Atlanta, and then she's running for governor of the state. Okay, so we need to have a focus that says that the interests of all of us is connected to who we put up. And each community, look at who the people are who are doing the work. Look at who they are, talk to them, meet. Interest group starts with people coming together like they did with footnote 7, knowing that they have a need. And once that group comes together and they decide they're going to pool their resources, then they become a pressure group. And they learn to apply pressure through voting, through registration, through writing letters, through editorials. I mean, you and I provide a perfect vehicle of public expression. We want people want to stop me in the supermarket in the parking lot and talk to me about the issues and say, write a letter, send an email so we can put it online and share it with folks. That's where the power and the strength is.
Well, Dr. Warren, I appreciate all the knowledge that you've given to us tonight. Here's the question I have. You said that in this week's newspaper that is out on tomorrow, there are endorsements that you're doing. Is it a page of endorsements? What are we looking for? Because I went online and I didn't see anything as of yet. And so I wanted to
It'll
say,
be posted tomorrow. It's a quarter page. The whole paper is online free. And what people do is they screenshot that section. Most of the times they take it on their phone into the voting booth,
Mhm.
and they go in and they vote that way with it. Okay. And so there are, I hit all of the key positions. Lachey Sharp Collins, we need to send her back to the assembly. Um, um, uh, uh, Sister Weber in the Senate, automatically we need to send her back, even as we're voting for people who are on the ballot, and we want to get these folks back in office and make the difference. And so that's so important. And I want to close by reminding you, though he was not one of my favorite people, I often quote Thomas Jefferson, who said that eternal vigilance is the price of freedom. And so we need to be able to watch what is taking place. ICE is still here. Trump is still holding money back from the state, messing with, the Medi-Cal and all these things. But that day is coming to an end, folks. All you need to do is keep voting and watch. And once that house collapses, then we will rebuild, and it will be just another cycle in America's page of greatness.
well, Dr. Warren, we want to end off. I know we're out of time, but I got to end off with this statement. It said, "Blacks are starting a poll to establish an all-black party. We'll discuss it next week." Question is it even possible?
You know what? We've been down that road so many times before. What you need to do next week is make sure you vote. And once we get past the election, then we can talk about, but what's the good of an all-black party if you're not voting anywhere? If you're voting, we already have an all-black party. In California, there are more independents than Republicans because that's a party, that's a group. And you've got all these different parties out there. You can be an independent and vote any party label you want to because of the way our code is set up, our electoral process. So let's not get hung up in trying to have a meeting and get together. We've been down there and creating a party platform. Why are you doing all of that? They done close the store and put you out on the street, and you don't have no place to go because you done messed up buying the same old okie doke. Let me make you focus on the rule changes and while we move with the rules that we have. Let's wake up, folks. Smell the coffee and get involved. I love y'all, but I'm going to stay hard because somebody got to stay hard. And, Petey Green used to say in D.C., I tell it to the young, I tell it to the old, I tell it to the hot, I tell it to the cold. Stay focused and stay involved. God bless you.
There you have it from the Desk of the Editor with Dr. John Warren. You all be blessed. Same time next week. Y'all check us out. God bless you.